bumped it and it did something weird.
It's maybe that cord's just had
I
it.
know. Oh, now it's working.
It's the cord.
It's the cord. You're just shorted it, I bet.
It's just probably
Why didn't get it wired somewhere else? I don't know if we're on yet. Did he? Okay, I guess so. Okay, I think we're going.
Will the Committee of the Whole Finance for Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, please come to order? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sorry. Berger?
Here.
Hines? Here. Maxwell?
Here.
May? Here. Reese?
Here.
Stugmeyer?
Here.
Yurchak?
Here.
Rossbert?
Here. You've had the opportunity to review the minutes of the Committee of the Whole Finance for February 3rd, 2026. May I have a motion to approve them?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes for the Committee of the Whole Finance for February 3rd, 2026 have been approved. Let's move into our draft legislation. Item 1, the ordinance levying special assessment for repairing and replacement of or construction of sidewalks.
This was discussed in public ways meeting and recommendation. This deals with the 2025 sidewalk program. There's approximately, as you can see in the draft legislation, about 59,000 and some change in terms of assessments that will be levied if passed in regards to this. Again, assessments are part of the Ohio Revised Code process, not unique to the City of Wadsworth. And in this particular opportunity, we provide those who have assessments to be rendered against their properties 2 opportunities to pay those assessments. One, they may pay by a certain time period, I believe it's May of this year, or they may split assessment payments into 5 payment periods. So there are options for individuals under assessment, certainly available for any questions if there are any.
Any questions, folks? Mr. Maxwell, would you take that and move it to second reading?
Yes, I will.
That'll be ordinance number 26-030.
Okay, the next ordinance is authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise, receive bids, and award contracts for the 2026 sidewalk improvement
I
program.
will also field that one. This is for our annual sidewalk program. The council may recall, based upon budget discussions, we reduced our normal amount of $350,000 per year to $250,000 for the sidewalk program. There is an opportunity to capitalize on the Medina County CDBG grant program, which might offer an additional $75,000 towards sidewalk improvements pursuant to the 2026 plan.
Any questions or discussions?
I did have just a question. I don't remember if we've discussed it like last year or this year. When the sidewalk repairs, is that just sidewalks that are not level, or are we working on the sidewalk areas that get flooded frequently?
So this program, the annual program, really doesn't address flooded sidewalk areas. We have received those complaints in the past, and we plug them into the program assessment, but the program really addresses any type of heaving or panel of sidewalk that's above 3/4 to a 1/4 inch, or excuse me, 3/4 of an inch or an inch in depth. The reason being is there are statutory requirements for repairs on those particular measurements in any sidewalk panel. This particular program, we're not actually addressing those this year. We're only addressing city responsibility tree root heaving. So if we have a city tree that caused a heaving in a sidewalk panel in front of a residence or in front of anywhere, that's what our program this year deals with. So the quick answer, Ms. May, is that it won't address flooded sidewalks in this particular annual program.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Mr. Maxwell, if you would take that and move it to second reading, please.
That'll be 26-031.
Next ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise and receive bids and enter into a contract for tree trimming and tree removal for electric lines.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is annual legislation to seek bids and hire a contractor to clear tree lines from our electric transmission and distribution lines. The contractor is basically just clearing a minimal amount to ensure the safety and clearance of the lines themselves. Each year, we alternate portions of the city. It's broken into basically a Section 1 and a Section 2. In 2026, we would be seeking bids on the larger of the two sections. Our estimate from a budgetary standpoint is about $225,000. Typically, the electric department sets the work priorities, although the contractor has the flexibility to remove tree branches without a property owner's permission if they're deemed to be a safety issue.
Any questions? Mr. Stugmeyer, would you take that?
We'll take that and we'll move that to second reading.
Thank you.
Okay, 26-032.
All right, the next ordinance authorizing directing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract with Andritz for the rebuild of the aqua screen at the city's wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. The aqua screen, it's a critical piece of equipment at our wastewater treatment plant. In essence, it removes large debris from incoming wastewater. You can almost think of it as a moving chain link fence that as the wastewater is initially coming into the plant, it's removing things like disposable wipes, rags, non-flushable items. And really, it's designed to protect the downstream equipment and just support general reliable plant operations. This particular legislation relates to a rebuild of the aqua screen unit, and the reason we're choosing to rebuild it as opposed to replace it is there's significant cost savings. So purchasing a new unit is in the neighborhood of about $500,000. The lowest of three bids that we received would cover the rebuild at about $194,000. This is roughly $25,000 less than what our budget is. Once the purchase order is issued, it probably takes us about 2 months to get the parts in. Then the unit's taken out of service, the contractor works on it and rebuilds it, and the expectation will be it will be back in service in early to mid-June. It will not influence or impact our continuing operations. We still have a manual bar rack that our operators essentially clean regularly to ensure that the debris is still removed and does not get into the system.
Questions? Okay, Mr. Berger, would you take that, please? Move it to second.
Sure.
26-033.
And the next ordinance is authorizing the Director of Public Service to purchase materials for CityLink Fiber to the Home project from Gray Bar Electric through the Omnia Partners Public Sector Cooperative and Purchasing Organization.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. This is our annual materials purchase for construction materials related to the build-out of the fiber network. We've got approximately 5,300 homes that are now ready for service. And we've been working with the contractor to get them to put some more crews in town to finish some splicing, which will actually dramatically increase the number of homes that will be available for that service. Typically, this is for what's known as MSTs. It's basically connections that would occur at a pedestal or at the pole, and the drop fiber, which is basically the lines that will run to each house, connect into these devices, which then connect into the splice cable that's running around the city as the network. So that's the large piece of this, but it's also for things like splice casing and the actual fiber itself. And the request would be to suspend and call. There's a concern that with all of the BEAD money that's starting to come into the marketplace, we're expecting both lead times on products and materials to increase, and we'd like to kind of get ahead of that a little bit. So our request would be for council's consideration to suspend and call this item.
Any questions? Mr. Stugmeyer, you want to
We'll
take that?
suspend and call that then.
Okay.
That'll be 26-034.
Thank you.
All right. right, the next ordinance is authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative agreement for public infrastructure improvements with the Medina County Port Authority and Addison Wadsworth LLC.
I can take that, Mr. President. This is the last of 3 pieces of legislation that are related to the TIF that is part of the Vance property development. The first one we passed in December, that was authorizing us to enter into an agreement, a developer's agreement with the developer to define what are TIF-eligible projects and the methodology for determining how to quantify those when the time is right. The second piece of legislation was authorizing the TIF to exist and occur to the term of 10 years, 75% of the eligible property tax would be applied to pay for those developments and other discretionary projects in the area that we're looking for, particularly the intersection of State and Reimer for some infrastructure improvements at that time. Those are done. So this is the last of the 3. And this one, now the developer is going out borrowing money. We're not borrowing money. They're borrowing money. They're borrowing money by issuing debt through the Medina County Port Authority. They'll take that money and they'll put it over in Huntington Bank, and it'll sit there and wait for our release. So they borrow the money, but we control the money. So when they've completed those projects, that money is released to the, so that they can pay those bills off. And this is a partnership agreement between us, the developer, and the Port Authority that essentially says that's what's going on. So our lawyer got this a little bit late. We have a specialized lawyer out of Columbus that is looking at this for our interests on all TIF-related things, and therefore I didn't see any problems with it, but I wanted to certainly glean any insight she may have on it. So I'd ask this be read at least one more time so that we give her an opportunity to do that.
Questions? Councilmember Hines, would you take that?
Yes.
That'll be 26-035.
Next ordinance is to rezone dual jurisdiction lots 10232 through 10235 to Shadow Creek Planned Unit Development and adopt zoning regulations for the Shadow Creek PUD.
I can take that, Mr. President. Shadow Creek Development's a 240 about units development that is going on the north side of Reimer Road between State and Hartman. It's coming to you for rezoning. Anytime property is rezoned, it is something that first goes through Planning Commission. They come up with a recommendation that has occurred, and then it comes to Planning Commission, and there's always a public hearing on that as well, which I believe the Clerk of Council has scheduled as well. The zoning is going to be a planned unit development. That gives the opportunity to have a little flexibility in the type of product that's involved in this development. They have some units that are estate size, so rather large, and then they have some that are smaller to give different products for different types of lifestyles. Density, this will all be presented to you in the public hearing, but it's less than 3. I think I checked that before I came down here. So it's consistent with our R1 zoning. So it's going to be scheduled for a public hearing where Mr. Kaiser and the developer can explain anything and answer any questions you may have or the public may have.
Questions on this? Councilmember May, would you take this and move it to second reading?
That'll be 26-036.
Our next ordinance is authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise and receive bids and enter into a contract for city street sweeping. I know this did not come before committee. I talked with Mr. Hiscock about this Friday, and I asked him to go ahead and put this on the agenda. So,
I could speak to this piece of legislation. Good evening, Mr. President, members of council. Like you said, this is our annual street sweeping bid. For the newer council members, what this includes is 9 cycles throughout the entire city. So we go from May until September. The month of May, we do 1 cycle, and then every month until September, we do 2 cycles throughout the entire city. Additionally, we also clean before every First Friday event, along with Memorial Day Parade, the Blue Tip Parade, which is the square and Broad and College Street along the parade route because of the excess amount of candy wrappers and debris that's left behind after the parade. It's also done for Scare on the Square and for the July Independence Day fireworks.
Any questions, folks? No. Mr. Reese, would you take that and move it to second reading, please?
Sure.
26-037.
The next ordinance is authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for and receive bids to enter into a contract for Pebble Lime for the City of Wadsworth Water Treatment Plant. Again, this did not make it to committee. Mr. Hiscock and I had conversation about this on Friday also. It is a necessity, and it comes up on a regular basis, but we are getting low, and it's time to go out and purchase Pebble Lime for the water treatment plant. So, anybody want to address it further? I'm not sure. I know it's part of the filtration, but other than that, I'm done.
I can provide a little bit additional information. So for us, our chemists on council, Pebble lime is actually calcium oxide, and it's used in the water treatment process to soften water, as well as it has an ability to address pH levels, and it aids in the reduction of corrosive materials within the system. It also, like many of our additives, has a positive effect in removing impurities. So it's something that we use our lime slakers and create a slurry to inject into the process, if you will. We had a slight move from 130,000 ASK to 140,000 ASK, so we thank Ms. Darlington for making that change in the proposed item. But this is an annual purchase. We usually make several different purchases, not knowing how much tonnage we would use in our treatment process. So this is something that's come directly from Superintendent Moore at the water treatment plant.
Any questions? Mr. Reese, would you take that and suspend and call that, please?
Yes, sir.
That'll be 26-038.
And then our next is an ordinance to make a supplemental appropriation of $1.55 million in the 425 General Capital Improvements Fund for the purpose other than personal services for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2026, and declaring an emergency.
So thanks, members of council. This is a direct result of the discussions we've had in furtherance of the project budget on the downtown infrastructure project. In particular, the direction we received from council at our last meeting to prepare a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $1.55 million, which would include some of the additional items that were discussed and voted on by the majority of council, at least. We did have some, and again, it's not the purpose of this particular ordinance, but we did have some further discussions and directives from council to consider some type of split in terms of potential debt issuance versus the use of cash in regards to that project. That final determination will come in a couple of weeks as we present to you legislation on debt-related issuances at that point in time. So certainly available to answer any questions that you might have about this supplemental appropriation.
Questions?
I mean, do we think it's wise to vote on this if we don't know what the complete issuance is yet of debt versus, coming out of city funds? I guess that's maybe more of a council question.
Can you talk about what we're looking at? Like, what do we think is going to come, either you or Auditor Fix, about, have there been any discussions as to how to pay for it? I assume.
So I guess I'll immediately speak to Mr. Berger's comment. So the question before you is, will you increase the project budget by $1.55 million? Any determination or vote you make on that particular supplemental appropriation does not address the issuance of debt or the use of cash at this point in time. However, I am disclosing to you that we've heard loud and clear that the council would like some type of split. I think the recommendation was perhaps a 50-50 split of $750,000 in cash, $750,000 in debt issuance. I think it's not premature to ask you to vote on that particular piece of legislation based upon your work sessions, based upon your direction in the past. That's why this supplemental was prepared. I think before we get to a point where we're certainly going to issue any debt, you will know where we stand in terms of the project and what we anticipate, again, in the form of cost estimates as to what will be debt issuance and what might be cash driven in terms of the funding. The reason that it's a little bit of an unknown right now is obviously because of where we are in the process. So we don't have 60% design yet, which gives us a better, more refined number, but we have cost estimates as prepared by the consultant team who's been working on the plan for many moons, as the council knows. So what we have to present to you is cost estimates. As we get further along in the process, for instance, after we hire a CMAR, and they're able to add value to the determination of what the costing is, and then ultimately, when a CMAR that's selected is able to provide what we call a GMP, or guaranteed maximum price on the project, we will know exactly in terms of what the cost estimates and what the cost of the project will be. However, that happens several months from now, and we really need, by our own rules and regulations, to have the money in place before I am authorized to execute any contract with any entity. So I think it is the proper process to go through right now to ask you to consider the increase in the project budget at this point, because that's really all what you're doing. As part of any supplemental process, and I'll certainly defer to Ms. Fix to answer more, we are moving money as a result of the supplemental at some point, if it's approved. And so there is a reduction in one area and an increase in another area, depending upon the funding funds that are identified for that move. But other than that, we're not making a determination necessarily on the amount of debt issuance or even the amount of cash to be used at this point in time.
Okay.
I got one more. Does the design team need this piece of legislation in order to start designing in those different aspects, or are they currently doing that?
So they are currently working on the design. They have not paused on that design at my request. And they, obviously, being a part of the work sessions, have heard firsthand some of the thoughts on that. They've also been given the information in terms of our last discussions at an open committee of the whole and finance meeting information. So they've continued to proceed on the design at this point in stage. However, if there is no approval, at some point I have to stop them in terms of their design process and reorient their efforts.
We're getting those done alternate bid, right? Those parts of the project for the 1.55 million?
I'm not exactly sure what you're referencing, Mr. Berger. I will tell you this. So we are contemplating using a CMAR project delivery method. And that CMAR project delivery method puts the onus on the CMAR who's selected to go out and seek bids for the different aspects of their project. Those bids aren't approved by you all as an authorizing entity. They're actually accepted and determined by the CMAR as to what's appropriate for the project. However, in our process, we require an open book style CMAR process, which means we will review the selection of their consultants as well as any other consultants or subs that they look at in terms of determining their pricing structure. So we have an opportunity to review it. It's just the bidding process, as we understand it, it's not a true bidding process, but it's pushed down to the CMAR in that project delivery model. And that is an acceptable project delivery model in the state of Ohio. Many cities use CMAR processes for these types of projects, and that's how it works. In the end of the day, the GMP, which is created as a result of those private bidding processes, represents the cost to us, and we ultimately decide whether that is acceptable or not acceptable in terms of a cost, and then authorize them to proceed. So I would tell you it's not a bidding process, but bidding is part of the process.
Okay, yeah, I would thought that everything was going to be, those are all going to be alternates to it so that we can determine the price when we were talking last time.
Okay, I see.
Maybe I worded it wrong.
I understand your question now. So they were not going to be alternates. However, we can include aspects of alternates in that. So the idea was if the project budget is expanded by the 1.55 million, we would include all of those sort of requirements of scope into what we're asking a GMP for. We can carve out any of those aspects in terms of what we might want to issue in terms of debt versus what we want to pay for cash. For instance, I know that you have been interested in maybe pulling wayfinding signage out of the overall debt issuance and paying cash for that. We can certainly do that throughout the process. What we'll need to see is what they include and how they include it in their GMP.
Okay. I guess my next question would be, do we need to make this an emergency then? Can we move it to 3 readings so we have time to see what the debt versus cash is going to look like? Since we're not necessarily releasing the money. You don't need the money today?
No, we certainly don't need the money today, but ultimately, if we push it for additional readings, while you may gain time in terms of understanding more clarity, you're actually delaying the selection process and the project in its entirety. The reason being is we can't select really a CMAR and actually enter into a negotiation with a CMAR for even pre-construction services unless we find those dollars somewhere else to do that. In addition, I think our goal is that we begin this project this summer. That is really our thought. And so the longer we proceed with legislative matters, the less likely it is that we will accomplish as much in this construction season as we are targeting. What does that really mean? Remember, the onus of this project is to shorten as much as possible, or at least be cognizant in shortening as much as possible, the effect it has on downtown businesses, property owners, and tenants in our downtown area, as well as the traveling community who goes through our downtown. So if we continue too far in the process, we lose constructability days, and ultimately we extend the duration of the project. And that's what we've been trying to avoid based upon the discussions we've had with property owners, stakeholders, folks in town in general. So while it's not the end of the world if you choose to do that, I think it have negative ramifications for the overall project schedule, as well as the pre-project aspects of finding the right CMAR and getting the design completed.
Sure. So if we just move it to second reading then, that's 2 weeks from now to make our decision? I mean, are we going to have a CMAR in 2 weeks?
No, you are correct to assume that we will not.
I think the more time we have to figure out this debt versus cash, the better, and another 2 weeks at this point. You know, that's my thoughts. And I'm also, I guess, we got the resolutions that were passed by the last council that limits the borrowing to critical infrastructure or safety, and then no debt or borrowing for park renovations. And if we want to do this project, I mean, we're going right against these resolutions, so we should at least vote to withdraw them or something. We should get them off the table, because right now we're just blatantly ignoring these. I don't like that.
I'd
Got some weird music going on, people, sorry.
I'd be happy to speak to that, and I'm glad that my music has started. It makes my presentation more powerful.
It's your walking music.
Mr. Berg, you did
Go
not-
ahead. I mean, I'm talking to everyone
You
here,
did not
so,
ask me,
yeah.
so I'll
I mean,
do
I-
whatever
no.
council would like.
Go ahead, I want to hear everyone's thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Ishak, go ahead.
So I think the first point I would make is that Resolution 2506, which was passed by the last council, certainly, I think, was an effort to prioritize when the city and future councils, including this council, uses debt versus using capital. And it prioritized that by the language of the resolution in terms of essential public needs over discretionary projects, critical infrastructure, and other fundamental public assets essential to health, safety, daily functioning of the community, safety and security needs of citizens, as well as identifying that these are all core responsibilities of any council. So I would tell you that based upon your discussions, it certainly can be opined that you're giving clear direction to this community that by a majority vote, that an increase in the project budget is important and essential. I think that forms the basis of the supplemental appropriation that you're asked to work on at this point in time, asked to offer a vote on. I think even in the committee meetings in support of Resolution 2506, it was clearly stated by council members that if there was a shift in direction, if there was at any time a desire to fund projects, all that needed to do was a vote by council in support of those projects. I think you have spent a lot of time and effort identifying that the downtown project is important. We certainly understand the importance in terms of the infrastructure involved, but I dare say that you've identified that it's more than just infrastructure. You know, council has the ability to determine what is and is not an essential public need. Is our downtown an essential public need? I would say there's many in our community that think it's the front steps or the porch to our community. It certainly is the host of numerous community events, as we all know. It certainly provides an essential core function to this community as we know it today. I think it will do that for many, many decades down the road. Is it a fundamental public asset, essential to health, safety, and daily functioning of the community? Yep, I would say yes. I think it'd be difficult to determine what aspect of this project isn't a public asset and what asset isn't essential to our community. I mean, I've talked a lot about certain things that I think we all can assume are clearly safety and oriented, things like traffic signals, pedestrian crossing signals, bump outs for crosswalks. But I would dare say there's other essential needs that maybe you won't think about that are essential. Things like parking spaces. Remember where this started in terms of an analysis of what is the most highly indicative incident that we have downtown where motor vehicles are involved in some form of crash. It's parking related, improper backing, improper parking. So when the design incorporates wider parking spots, deeper parking spots, those are all designed for the health and safety of those who are traveling and visiting our downtown. That's an important safety aspect. Well, obviously, because of the infrastructure needs, we're going to be tearing up sidewalks. That's why we talked to this council and the past council about the magnitude of streetscape ideas that we'll have to do. But we know that there will be laterals and things that go into businesses, that go into certain properties, that will remove sidewalk areas. Sidewalks are infrastructure. Sidewalks, safe sidewalks, are important to securing people downtown. What do I mean by that? Well, there's lots of publications that'll tell you a sidewalk that is improperly installed, a sidewalk that is not part of an annual sidewalk program, a sidewalk that is uneven, that is not level, does not handle stormwater correctly, is failed infrastructure. Those are all parts of essential infrastructure aspects. So I would tell you that your discussion about increased fees, increased budget project costs, I should say, increased budgets in general, all talk about or point to items that are essential, items that are public assets, items that arguably could be considered infrastructure that is essential to the health, safety, and daily functioning of our community. I think all of that helps to protect citizens in the end of the day. Whether you frequent downtown lots of times or whether you visit just during community events, you shouldn't be walking across surfaces that aren't improved. You shouldn't be taking your life in your hands to trip over sidewalks that have been disturbed by utility projects. You should be dealing with crosswalks and roadways and lighting and pedestrian crossings and traffic signals and parking spaces and 88 ramps, all that affect public infrastructure, pointed to making sure that the impacts of this project and the ultimate effect of the project in its end goes to securing our community, making it safer, and improving essential public needs. For those respects, I would dare say you've already spoken about the importance of this project. And if we look at just the minutes of the meetings that were in support of the resolution, I think you can arguably say that it's important to this council, which matters, It's important to future councils. It was important to a past council as to what's essential and what is not essential. I think you've spoken to that already. You just have to vote now.
Okay, so if everyone agrees with Mr. Hiscock, then I guess we don't have to change that resolution. If everyone's comfortable with it, the way it's written now and approving this stuff, that's okay.
Any further discussion?
I just had a quick question. It was relating to the funding in general for the project. So is it the design company, the company that you've got to do that? Are they the ones that came up with the number, the overall number for the entire thing?
Yeah, so there's two different consultants that we've been working with. There's an entity that is an engineering and design firm. They obviously have a lot of input and knowledge about estimated costs from infrastructure sides of things, some of those essential areas. There's another company that we're working with that is a landscape architecture company. They're the ones who would come up with more definitive costs on some of the streetscape aspects that came later in our process. Actually, we're not part of the approval process. So those two consultants combined are the ones that have submitted, again, I would tell you, estimated costs as they understand them to date. Again, that's without a 60% even design package completed at this point, but it's using all of the information they have available to themselves to determine costs.
And hypothetically, if if you went out to bids and the lowest bid was over what they had estimated, how would that be handled?
So remember, we're using a CMAR process. So if our CMAR process comes back with a guaranteed maximum price that is in excess of what you've authorized, first and foremost, there's no contract. I am prohibited from entering into that on behalf of the City of Wadsworth, nor would I even entertain entering into it. I think what we would do would be take a look at what they included in their GMP and get a better understanding with our consultants as to why the numbers are different than anticipated. I obviously would also report those findings and any analysis we do to you all as council. And then we would have to decide what to do. While at the same time of those discussions, I would be leaning heavily, along with my assistant directors, on the CMAR to say, why are your numbers the way it is? Show us your book values. Show us what the quotes you received for these projects. We would be analyzing what to pull out of the project to perhaps propose to you in an alternative form or something of that nature. So those are all potentials here that we don't know of. One of the things that I will tell you is that our engineering department remains engaged with the engineering team on the consultant level. And I will tell you, I've heard the discussions, and I will tell you, I've been around long enough to know that oftentimes we look at a budget number in a project and say, that's not going to do it. There's always something we're missing, and something's going to come back differently, and for the most part, it's higher. But we've already looked at some of the design documents and said, you know what, I think we can do without that aspect. And so we're removing items from the design that I think will equate to lower GMP numbers as we get it in. Now, the minute I said that, please don't take that as a promise that we're going to come in below the budget. But that is a positive in terms of the direction we're going and evaluating where we are in the design already. I'm hoping that we find more of those opportunities to either come in on budget or below what the budget for the project is. Let's face it, it's a public forum, it's a public project. Ultimately, our budget becomes a public number. Consultants, CMARs, others involved, they see those numbers and they understand it. So do they play to the number? Yes, but in the end of the day, we have to be cognizant of what that number really represents and what we can and cannot do. Mr. Reese, your question's a good one, and I can't answer it in totality today. That being is, I don't have a GMP in front of me, and I don't have the analysis of how they came up with that GMP. Ultimately, we set a budget, and we want certain things out of that budget. Maybe the GMP comes in at our budget number or below it, but they say, guess what, you can't do these 3 items in there. And we would offer to you as an alternate to say, we can do those 3 items for this amount, kind of thing. Or ultimately, maybe it comes back as one number, and we pull things out of that number and say, by our calculation, you're now below our budget number. We'd like to remove those items from the scope of this project. Those are all things that I won't know until we see that CMAR GMP. And obviously, you'll be a big part of that process when we get there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Yurchek, would you take that? And what would you like to do with it?
I'll go ahead and move to second reading as requested by some council members.
Be 26-039.
Let's move on to our other items on our regular agenda. Ordinance number 26002 on third reading to amend section 3436 of the codified ordinance of the City of Wadsworth to provide for the allocation of income tax receipts of $4,767,961. Mr. Reese?
I guess we're going to call that tonight.
Okay. And then ordinance number 2615, also on third reading, authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter an agreement for professional engineering services and design for the 2026 sanitary sewer overflow SSO reduction. Mr. Maxwell?
Yeah, we'll call that, Mr. President.
Okay. All right, that brings us to other business. I see a work session on the annexation.
Yeah, it's not really a work session, you'd be happy to hear. It's just a scheduling of a work session.
Okay.
To happen. We talked about an economic development. We were approached by a developer about a new project just south of our brickyard project on Wall Road. That's going to need the full gambit. If you so just choose, it would need annexed into the city. It would need rezoned. And there's some potential TIF projects that could help expand our infrastructure and help some of our industry in the area. Pursuant to 23, when this is triggered, we're going to set it down for a work session. And you're going to be able to see a couple things. You're going to see the concept maps before you get in there. You'll get a presentation at that work session from the developer. I'll go over the annexation guidelines that we have, the planning documents that are in place. You'll get reports or live hearing from the engineering, service side, safety side as to what the limitations of services that will be available, if any. And we'll discuss any off-site improvements that may be something you would be interested in, some TIF-eligible projects. We're going to ask that to give everybody time to get everything done. Maybe the first or second week in March would be a good time for that. Give us an opportunity to get all our ducks in a row. They have not filed for annexation yet, so some of you that have been through the process know that once the clock starts, that we got 15 days to do a resolution of service. They have not filed based on my request, so that we have time to look at this to see if we can come up with some type of pre-annexation agreement before they file or can't. But that's going to be up to you after that, in that work session and discussion.
Anything else from administration?
When do you anticipate that work session?
I was hoping for either the first or second week in March. Just a little bit of time to get everything ready.
Anything else from administration? Okay.
Would you like us to speak to an issue that has arisen recently?
I thought I would introduce that. Last year's council decided that it was time to have an audit committee. There are 3 council members that serve on that committee. The members of this council that serve are Councilmember Stugmeyer, Councilmember May, and myself. And we met on Friday, and in discussions with the audit committee and the auditor, it was revealed to us that there are accounts receivables on utility bills to what appears to be the tune of about $1.65 million. It was on Facebook today, it was on social media, but what I want to clarify is Friday was the first we ever heard about it. Number 2, it is not the city that owes money, it is customers of the city that owe the city money. So it's not us that owes it, it is our customers that owe us. And just on quick glance through that, it appears that that number keeps going up every year, approximately $144,000 a year. That's what we discussed at that meeting. with Mr. Testa, we had talked about collections, and the discussion was about starting a collection with a collection agency in June. We tasked him with March 1st. We're not going to sit on this anymore. So that's what the council knows. I did spend time, I did not call the two members of the audit committee yesterday and discuss it with them because they were well aware of everything, but I made sure that every other council member knew about it so that we could discuss it tonight, and wanted to bring it forward and make it public. And we're hoping to get ahead of the social media curve, but that did not happen. So as representatives of the residents of this community, I'm telling you, we found out on Friday. Some of the council members, I waited till Monday to tell them, because that meeting on Friday was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I just thought I'd wait till Monday to discuss with them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to administration to address anything they would like to on this.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also attended that audit committee meeting, and I'd like to start maybe just by providing a little bit of context. Council President, you had mentioned that we've seen an increase in our past due balances over the last 40 years or so. And again, I want to put this in perspective. That increase totals about $578,000. That's on about $250 million of revenue. In other words, approximately 0.2% is the percentage there over the last several years. It's also important to note that as each year goes by, our revenues have increased. So 578,000 actually represents a fairly consistent percentage relative to sales. Maybe another way to say this is that on average, over the last 4 years, we have collected, or we are current on 99.8% of our billings. So I'm not sure that was clear during the audit committee meeting. I'd also like to make a distinction that of the 1.6 million, approximately 1.5 million relates to inactive accounts. The majority of that balance was outstanding prior to when I started, or prior to when our current billing manager started. So since that point in time, we've been pretty good about collecting on those amounts. Typically what happens if the account's inactive, that means maybe a company was sold, maybe there's been a bankruptcy. It means that whoever was associated with that account is no longer a utility customer of ours, with the majority of them either going defunct or moving away. One of the things that we talked about last year is hiring an outside collection firm, more specifically a collection law firm, to see what of that money could be collected. And there's a time component here because money prior to 2021, or from the year 2021, I believe if it's not collected by the end of this calendar year, we couldn't collect that money. Now, the reality of it is a couple of things here. Typically, if it was water or sewer monies, those monies get sent to the treasurer and they get put on property tax bills. I think the problem that we're going to run into a little bit with basically past due amounts that are that old is that a lot of those are going to be smaller amounts. Where a collection law firm or a collection firm typically likes to set a minimum amount, meaning unless the debt is over a minimum threshold, it's not worth their time because they make their money taking a percentage of what they collect, and they have a better chance of collecting when they're taking somebody to court and getting a judgment. Of course, getting the judgment doesn't mean we'll see the cash, but based on what I've looked into in my discussions with our current billing manager, I believe a lot of that probably didn't have good information, meaning over the years, I'm sure people's email addresses and phone numbers have changed. And again, a large percentage of these people have moved out of the area altogether. So I think that that's going to be the challenge. So I would kind of bring this around to say two things. One, I am awaiting some dates from the law firm as to when we can move this up and speak about this. So the goal, our original goal was by the end of the second quarter, June 30th, we were going to get them on board. They're already on board working on something else. They're working on our miscellaneous bill collections. But the plan was to have them work on that for a while and then transition them to the utility expenses. So we're going to move that up to over the next couple of weeks. But the second thing of that, the second part of that is of the active people, of the people that owe us money, again, it's a very small percentage of our overall customer balance. Again, it's 578,000. Well, on its own, sounds like a large number. It represents 0.2% of our sales over that period. So I say this just to provide some context that the sky is not falling. It put it additional some perspective on this. If you were to take that 1.6 million and divide it by last year's utility revenues, it comes out to about 3.1%. Typically in the industry, that number is between 3 and 4%. So we're actually toward the low end of what is typical in the industry. And I would invite any questions or thoughts.
How far back did you go? Like how many years?
So the information that was presented at the audit committee started with the outstanding balance as of December 31st, 2021. It was about $1,047,000 that was outstanding at that point. At the end of 2025, it was approximately 1.63 million. So the difference being 578,000 and some change.
Can you say that number again? So how much of it was outstanding prior to December 31st, 2021?
About $1,047,000 and some dollars there. And it's also fair to say too that, again, that balance that was outstanding at that point, it's not likely that it was all from 2021. It's probably the accumulation, again, of past due accounts from years prior to that. So it's reasonable to believe a fair percentage of that is probably not collectible now.
And initially, you only looked back to 5 years because that's all that's legally collectible, right? 5.5 years or so?
6-year statute.
Oh, 6 years, okay.
What's the typical procedure when the debt originates? So when somebody moves out and they have an unpaid debt, what's the procedure, the immediate procedure? Is there one?
Yeah, so in general, our standard collection process is, we issue bills monthly. If the bill, other current customer, if the bill was 60 days past due, we issue a disconnect notice and basically give them approximately 2 weeks to resolve the balance. And then a green tag or a disconnect notice goes out and their services are terminated. If it's a larger dollar balance, meaning if it's, say, a residential customer that's approaching $1,000 in their bill, typically we give them the 24-hour shut-off notice immediately as opposed to issuing a disconnect notice and giving them some time to address it. In terms of service shut-off, typically internet is disconnected first, then electric. Water shut-off is typically only kind of a last resort because if there's some health and safety impact there. Typically, if a property does not have water and sewer service, I believe the county health department may view that as inhabitable or uninhabitable. Now, also, one thing that's not reflected in that balance is that several people, we have several customers that are on payment plans. So as an example, let's say that you're a customer and you owe $1,000 and your average monthly bill is $200. If you're paying $250 under a payment plan, meaning you're staying current and you're working down the balance, and you're staying current on working down that balance, those folks are still paying on that balance, but whatever's outstanding still shows up typically in the 1.6 million number. So there are some customers that have payment plans. I also want to provide a little bit of direction too, that you got to understand that if you're a utility customer, you're typically also a constituent and a taxpayer and part of the community. So we normally try to work with folks to help them, whatever the situation is, get back on a payment plan, get back on their feet. Obviously, during this time frame, we experienced COVID. There were a lot of folks that may have lost jobs or had a reduction in income. Typically, it's something along the lines, say we had a job loss, unexpected surgery, or hospitalization. So, we try to be as lenient as we can. There are several social service agencies in the area that if somebody's having a difficult time paying their bill, we'll make a referral and provide that information to them. And oftentimes a social service agency will make a payment on that account. We typically don't shut off services when it's unusually cold, so typically below, freezing. And if you look at maybe the last 6 weeks or so, it's been unseasonably cold, so we typically, are not to shut folks off for those things. So we have a process. The process itself actually runs as it should. Wherever possible, we try to help folks out. But again, I would say that, with 99.8% of our active customers are current, it's not really been a problem over the last several years. I can't speak as much to what maybe the previous billing manager, what the thought process was, or maybe how those amounts accumulated. But I would say, certainly since our current billing manager's been here, and I've had some oversight of this since 2022, it seems like we've been pretty consistent and structured in that regard.
So when it gets to the point that, your water shut off or whatever, and there's just no communication, then what happens to that?
So, for example, if somebody owes us money and we've issued a disconnect, we don't.
Mr. Testa, can you speak up a little bit?
Mr. Reese, you're asking, for example, if somebody is 60 days past due and we've sent them a disconnect notice, but they don't contact us, and then we send them the green tag, which basically means within 24 hours we're going to cut you off, and we don't hear from them, we would go out and shut them off.
Well, I mean, the past due bill, is it just in limbo then?
So typically, if you're somebody that's still a customer, no, you're going to get a bill and you're going to get a penalty assessed, and you're going to now owe what you owe before your current bill plus the penalty. I will say one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years, we've hired a utility billing supervisor who was personally involved in reaching out to past due active accounts that were behind, and she's done a pretty good job of getting them to pay. She's collected about $400,000 in past due accounts. But again, there tends to be some folks who are habitual. They're behind, they get caught up, and then they start falling behind again. Typically, if we've offered you a payment plan once, we're not going to offer you another one. If we've offered you a payment plan and you've not honored it, we're moving into the disconnect and the service cutoff. By and large, most folks pay their bills on time. And when people get, have a little bit of trouble, we've tried to work with them in the past, but ultimately we do have a procedure where we go through the process of terminating their service.
I had a question. How many are residential versus commercial, industrial?
Overall customers, or you mean on the?
That are behind?
I don't know that, Ms. Hines. I need to get that information from our utility billing manager and break it down.
We collect deposits, correct, when we sign up a new utility customer. I'm assuming that those amounts that you've given us are reflected that we've taken that deposit off those balances?
Yeah, I believe we do. We offset as much of the expense. But again, you know, a lot of times if you're somebody that's moving out of town and you're falling behind, it's not enough to cover what your balances might be, especially if you're behind even a couple of months.
And to follow up, I'm assuming you're going to look at like an AR aging report that kind of shows us this is how much is 30, 60, 90, 120 plus, kind of
Yeah.
evaluate that?
Yeah, so the amount we're talking about, the 1.63 million, that is balances that are past due by 120 days, so 4 months. So anything beyond 4 months. And again, given the fact that we had a relatively large amount as of the end of 2021, it would imagine a pretty big chunk of that is actually quite low.
Well, I think you said the chunk was 1,047,000 is that old. So based on kind of some of the things you said, so we bill 30 days in the rear. So inactive customers theoretically could be upwards of 90 days having not paid their bill. So they could have gone 60 days without being put on notice or a disconnect notice, and then they have that third month, and then they move out of the community. You're never going to see that money again.
Yeah, so if it's, again, you're an active customer and that's happening now, we work with what's called a skip tracing service, basically a non-attorney collection agent that tries to track these folks down and collect on that money. That wouldn't be the case for older debts because that's something we've just implemented over the last few years. But it's also, you know, fair to say that, you know, once a debt, you know, falls beyond, you know, 12 months being unpaid, it gets typically harder to collect. You know, if the amounts are smaller, meaning it's not cost effective to take that account holder to court, it's, you know, it's harder to provide an incentive to collection agencies to go after those folks. Typically, a collection agent will take about roughly a third of what it is they collect. But when they're looking at smaller dollar amounts, you know, they look at the age of that as well, and they basically decide, you know, what are we going to do here? Should we send a letter? Okay, maybe we'll do that once. But again, you know, if you're somebody that, you know, maybe 10 years ago had a past due balance, and you moved out of town and your email has changed or your phone number has changed, or maybe when that customer was originally set up 20 years ago, we didn't even capture a phone number or an email address. It makes it harder for collection agents to track that down and frankly to look at that and say it's worth our time to track these folks down. I think what's realistic is that we'll get to a point where we will finally be able to determine that, you know, some of this stuff we need to do something with, whether it's write it off as bad debt or something to take it off our books. What we've done with the piece that we're doing with the miscellaneous bill collections is that, you know, the law firm is basically going through the steps that we've outlined, and then at the end of that, if, you know, after they've made at least one attempt to contact, you know, each account on the list, their job is to make a recommendation to us as to, you know, hey, it's probably not worth continued effort here to seek collection on this, or hey, the cost to go after this is likely to exceed what we would collect. And again, you know, the last piece of the puzzle is even if we were to get a judgment, that does not equate to us getting cash back. So there's a number of issues that we're dealing with. The takeaways would be our current citizenry, or our current customers are by and large on time, they're current with their bills. The vast majority, again, 99.8% of all of our billings are current or have been collected over the last several years. But you know, past due amounts that existed at least for 5 years or so, you know, we got to figure out what we're going to do about those.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this right. So of the 1.65 million, 1,047,000 was prior to the year 2021, which roughly leaves a balance of $603,000.
Yes.
You said that our billing manager was able to, since she came on board or he or she, I'm not sure which, collected around $400,000 in past billings. So isn't that number, so that would tell me either we should only be about $200,000 worth of debt collection, or we were closer from 2021 to where we are at today to $1 million.
Yeah, no, I think the way to look at that would be that of the increase, so of the, say, 578,000, and I'm going by the numbers at the end of 2025 and the end of 2021, not, what the balance might be as of, for example, today, February 17th. But of that increase of, say, 578,000, that would reflect the fact that we collected basically another 400,000 in there at some point over the last few years. There was an effort approximately 18 months ago, and you probably saw it play out a little bit in the social media, where we we're fairly firm and just, I don't want to say stop coddling people, but we really were tight in saying, no, this is the way we do things now, and we're going to cut you off. And most of the time, when you say that to somebody, particularly if it's their internet service of all things, miraculously they come up with the money. And we typically, if they've been behind at that point, we typically make them bring their account current. If they've had a payment plan and not honored it, hey, you've got to pay off the whole balance before we're turning it back on.
So there's situations where we may be providing internet, but they may be overdue on their other utilities, and that's, is that correct?
Yeah, so again, of the 1.6 million or so, 1.5 million of that are not active accounts. So there are balances. The largest single piece of that 1.6 million relates to electric services. And again, I don't have any particular insight into why that balance had accumulated to, $1,047,000 by the end of 2021. But it's made up of several things, electric being a large piece, CityLink also being about a fifth of what electric is, but still a large piece. With CityLink, you have the tendency for people to leave and not return equipment. So some of that's the balance. Also, some of the balance is penalty fees too. So not only did they not pay their bill, but we've assessed the penalty fees that we're still due, and that's part of what's owed. It makes up that 1.6 million. So again, roughly 100,000 thereabouts is what current active folks are behind on, of at least 120 days.
Do we have any of those current clients past 120 days that aren't on a payment plan?
That I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, only because the way they keep manual records of our payment plans, and we haven't had a chance to put that together just since Friday.
Can you send us the rules, regulations that you guys currently have in place now?
Yes.
Thank you.
If you're behind, so 120 days, is it say, so do those customers still have service and they're 120 days behind? I mean, I know you mentioned the water, so obviously there's some things that you can't do, but I guess, so take what someone would say we have to provide as a community. Are they still being provided the other services, or you had said that at 60 days they're getting a disconnect notice?
Yeah, so.
What's the temperature outside? For that question.
Yeah, no, I know.
That would factor in.
Sure.
Do they have a sanitation card anymore, or did we take that away from them? Did we shut off their internet if they were an internet customer already? Possibly. We're probably not going to we won't turn off their electric if it's cold out, below 35 degrees. We won't shut off their water, which impacts their sewer, obviously, too. So it depends on the time of the year on what they are. So, John, the issue becomes, and Mr. Tessa did a nice job, I hope, in filling in some blanks for you all to give you the rest of the picture about what's really happening here. But we're faced with some very difficult decisions at times on behalf of whether we shut off an 80-year-old person living in an apartment or whether we do not do that based upon issues and those kind of things. And we do have those. It's also naive us to think that we don't have people who game us either. By that I mean they get late, they know they're moving, they know we're not going to shut off for the winter months. Guess what happens to their bill? And then guess what happens when we try to track them down? There's no tracking them down.
Sure.
So just like any business that begins with billing in arrears, we already begin behind the 8 ball a little bit. Saying that, we've made vast changes since 2022 in terms of the way we comply with the Fair Debt Collection Act, which is a part of this equation too. In addition, we've changed the way we look at landlord-tenant disputes in terms of who's owing us and who isn't, kind of thing. That is the subject matter of a House bill before the state legislature, which has been a discussion point for more than a year down there that's going to influence revenues in utilities like ours in the end of the day, depending on that happens. So we have some challenges in this area, certainly. But I think if you look at the types of accounts, the age of those accounts, and what we've been doing since 2021 forward, it's a different ballgame. And I can tell you that Mr. Tessa did a nice job vaguely referencing what happened 18 months ago. Well, you can look right at me to see what's changing in those 18 months.
And I appreciate that.
We also don't want to be the hammer. And
Sure.
we've gotten direction from folks up on that dais telling us, don't be the hammer at certain times. And so it all factors into a process in which we try to find a balance. In addition, hasn't been pointed out, I just have a couple other points to make for you. In no way, shape, and form were these aged accounts factored into necessarily our rate changes that have been coming about. Yes, revenues would have helped us. Revenues certainly would help us. They always help us. But in the end of the day, the analysis that is done by the folks who do our rate paying or rate analysis, they factor in the total revenue numbers. They don't factor in losses and those kind of things in terms of some of those aspects. So that's an important aspect of it. So it's a complex situation filled with both, starting with what you said, Mr. President, and that is, it's not the city that's done something wrong here, folks. The city provided a service which wasn't paid for. Now, how do we address that failure to pay, and what are our real opportunities to collect on that? I mean, I'll use a little lawyer ease here. If it's more than 12 months, there is a difficult way or likelihood of recovering those dollars at all, let alone getting a collection agency with any type of backbone to get engaged in onesie-twosies. And by that I mean $100 here, $43 there, $2,500 there. They just don't come to court for folks like us to support us in those realms. It is a challenging environment.
And I appreciate the conversation and the comments, and I think it's great for everyone to know what these challenges are, because frankly, what we woke up to this morning was a Facebook post saying that we were $1.65 million in the rear of billing. So I think this conversation brings to light what we're actually dealing with, and at some point, there has to be an understanding of what's acceptable as a council, as an administration. And if we're going to keep referencing the 1.65 million, knowing that some of that 1,047,000 was before 2021. This is not an issue that started this morning when we woke up and saw a Facebook post. This is something that's been happening since well before 2021. My math tells me 11 and a half years. We're taking on another 144,000 every single year of this. So if there's not an understanding of what's acceptable, then how do we know if we're really in trouble? So once again, it's perception, it's numbers. We hear the 1.65 million and the world's falling. And then you have a conversation about it and you realize that that's not the whole story. And this is what we've been doing, is we get into these arguments, and we have these big numbers, and then no one understands how it really happens. So, I mean, I guess it's just frustrating. And I'm not frustrated with administration. I mean, this is the first you've done it. I'm frustrated that it sounds like we've known about the problem, or did we just discover it on Friday? I guess that's the part that's a little bit alarming. I mean, to never hear a number like $1.65 million, I think every resident in this community and every council member and every administrator and every auditor should be like, what in the world? Let's figure out what's going on and what's acceptable. I mean, let's just get to an answer, because it's just hard to...
And this information was not in our budget book. I'd just like to put that out there.
Nor is the information about EMS billing,
Yeah.
nor is the information about court age billing.
Yeah.
None of that is presented, quite honestly, because it's an operational issue. And operations are the basis of the administrative area. It was, I believe, reviewed, I'll defer to Ms. Fix, but we have auditors, outside auditors who come in who probably took a look at these things, and those weren't reported to you in terms of arrearage amounts or any of those areas. In the end of the day, I think Mr. Testa provided to you some important data points, and that is we're below the industry amount in terms of age debt. We have a process in which we go as far as shutting folks off in terms of trying to collect. We know that folks, while most of our customers, who are your constituents and my friends and fellow neighbors, pay on time, we do have folks in our community who don't. And we provide a service. That service is billed in arrears, so we're all in arrears initially when we get our bill. But in the end of the day, we have folks who, like any company who does that, or any enterprise who does that, ends up getting stiffed at times. What do we do? What have we done? And how do we move forward, I think, are the important factors. And certainly, we can provide additional data and additional information about age reports, what we know, what we don't know, and we can provide processes and procedures to make sure council is aware of what we're doing or how we're doing. And then we can continue to engage and be much more aggressive if we find the right firm to support us in those efforts to try to collect on these things. But our business processes and what we're doing currently help sustain the fact that we have very, very positive collection numbers at this point in time. The aged amount is a problem, and it's cautionary and it's concerning. But in the end of the day, I think we've provided you with a little bit more insight than perhaps the Post did at this point in time.
I would still be curious as to percentage of...
Individual versus businesses, yeah.
Residential versus business.
I would agree.
You know,
Excellent
industrial.
question.
I would be too, because that could really skew things.
Mr. Testa, if you could get that to us at some point in the future, commercial versus residential.
Yeah, and you know, for perspective, and I won't mention particular company names, but our utility billing manager did come up and say, okay, of the inactive accounts, here are the customers with the top, basically past due balances. Some of them, the accounts maybe were 1, 2, 3 accounts with the same company, but it's, you know, this company was sold, this company basically went out of business, or, you know, working through bankruptcy. And to put that in perspective, just, you know, those accounts, and it probably only makes up about 5 different customers, that's close to 200,000 of that 1,500,000 in inactive. So, we are putting that together anyway, is the breakdown of what's residential versus commercial. I will say there was one individual on there that we had several problems with that kind of took off. But by and large, the big dollar amounts are entities that, aren't here for one reason or another. Maybe the owner died, something like that.
Any other questions?
I just, you guys had mentioned that you were aware, at the end of December of 2021, of about $1 million, and that's when you guys came up with your new processes, starting in '22, the new kind of corrective action for this past debt?
Really, the 1.6 that we discussed at the audit committee really kind of put a dollar amount around the old stuff. We focus on, where are we at with our current customers, where are we at with the active accounts. We had already started to go down the road on the collection side of things. So, that's why we went to a skip tracing service a couple of years ago. If you remember, roughly about this time last year, we presented the policy to City Council as to how we were going to handle miscellaneous bill collections. We'd worked through, onboarding a law firm. And by the way, I had been involved in interviewing different law firms that specialize in collection services. And I can tell you that, the general consensus, except for the firm that we're working with, was, hey, we've got minimums, and, if you're not meeting our minimums, we're really not interested. I will also say that the firm that we are working with is one of the premier collectors on behalf of the state of Ohio, and the Attorney General. So it's definitely a reputable firm. But I will provide that breakdown.
Thank you.
I guess I think it was you, Mr. Hiscock, I heard say that you guys were aware at the end of 2021 that you were $1 million, and that you guys started the corrective action, starting in '22. So that's 4 years for the $650,000.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Berger, I was not in this role in '21, so that,
Okay. Well, maybe
so I was not
misheard you or
aware of that personally. So what we're discovering is based upon the audit information that was talked about, and I think what Mr. Test is making reference to is back when we changed some things. So, for instance, I think when you looked at some of the aged accounts, I can tell as a lawyer that we would have extreme difficulties on collecting on those aged accounts because we did not comply with the Fair Debt Collections Act. By that I mean we don't have the base information that's needed to file collection actions on those types of accounts. So we changed that process, and we've improved that process starting in 2022, it looks like, from my review, that we're already doing better in terms of complying with some of those requirements so that we don't get handcuffed later in terms of having to go down a collection path. That was the reference.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep, sure.
That being said, that Mr. Hiscock wasn't here, but from 22 to the end of 25, that's 4 years, that's $650,000 the last 4 years that we haven't collected. That's $162,500 a year, not $144,000. I guess what I'm getting at is, to go along with Mr. Yuracek, is we really need to see what the processes are and see if we need to do some corrective action to change it, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
And again, I want to provide some perspective that, the $600,000 on $250 million of revenue for that period of time, it's a small amount.
I think the issue...
But to say that, well, why is it increasing? Well, remember, our annual utility revenues are increasing as well. Therefore, the percentage would be relatively static. It's actually gone up, I think, 4 years ago it was 99.6%, then it went to 99.9%, then in the last 2 years, 99.7%. So although the dollar amount of the past year's gone up, it's keeping pace with the fact that we've had an increase in revenues as well. So it's not a situation where all of a sudden, that's creeping up unexpectedly or at a rate that It hadn't been in the past.
Sure. I mean, we've been operating at a deficit. You know, we're asking for another 1.55 million for the downtown project. So I think every dollar counts right now. So I just want to make sure that we have the right processes in place to try to keep this number as low as possible.
So I got to jump in because I'm hearing this rumor throughout our community. We are not operating at a deficit. We are not operating at a deficit. In fact, when we closed the books on 25, we were 1.2 million in the positive in terms of the general fund. So the budget that was presented had more expenses than revenue proposed. We ended the year, as we normally anticipate, with more revenue than expenses. We are not operating at a deficit. Please know that we are not operating at a deficit.
Thank you for that clarification.
That is misinformation in our community.
Thank you for that clarification.
Anything else? I do think this conversation was good to have. I wanted the public to know that the council just learned about this, and that's why the council last year wanted to have an audit committee so we can delve into these things a little deeper. And I think nothing but good comes from these conversations. So thank you for the preparations you made, and thank council for the wonderful, which I think were some very good questions. The only other thing I have, we had talked about this at a work session. It is not a mandatory thing for our council, but we are going to try something on the 26th at 6 o'clock here in council chambers. It's going to be conversations with the council. We're going to have council members here that residents can come in and speak to them one-on-one, because not everybody's comfortable getting up in front of a group like this. They're not all comfortable being on TV, and we will have some council members here. Like I said, it is not a requirement of council, but some of the council members will be here, and we're encouraging residents to come in and have one-on-one conversation with different council members, and we'll be here, you know, if we have 100 people, we'll stay and talk. If nobody shows up, that's fine too, but we're going to be here to hear what the community wants to talk about. With that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting of the whole. We'll take a 5-minute anything else? No. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll begin our regularly scheduled council meeting.
Did they adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Adjournment. We are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.
Good evening. Will the regular meeting of the Wadsworth City Council for Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, please come to order. Will you please rise, silence cell phones, recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, who has given us this good land to be our heritage, we acknowledge our dependence on you for all things, and we thank you for all your blessings, including the right and the privilege to govern ourselves in this free land. We pray that you will grant us all wisdom to make good decisions for the future of this community. Through Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Will the clerk please take a roll?
Berger?
Here.
Hines?
Here.
Maxwell?
Here.
May?
Here.
Reese?
Here.
Stugmeyer?
Here.
Yuracek?
Here.
And Rosberg.
Here. You've had the opportunity to review the minutes of the regular council meeting of February 3rd, 2026. May I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes for the regular city council meeting of February 3rd, 2026 have been approved. We will now move into our visitors section. If there are any visitors who would like to address the council, please come to the podium. State your name and address for the record and keep your comments brief. Seeing none, we will move on. Are there any correspondences?
There is no correspondence.
All right. Then we will move on to the reading of our, I'm sorry, our committee updates. And we'll begin with public service.
Thank you,
Councilmember Stugmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Service Committee will next meet on Tuesday, March the 10th, 5:30 p.m. here in council chambers.
Okay. Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Yurchek.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Safety Committee will next meet on Wednesday, March 11th at 4:45 p.m. in council chambers.
Okay. Public Ways, Councilmember Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Ways Committee will meet Monday, March 9th, 2026, 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Economic Development and Planning, Councilmember Hines.
Thank you, Mr. President. Economic Development and Planning will meet Monday, March 9th at 5 p.m. here in council chambers.
The Audit Committee did meet this past Friday, and we will meet again on Thursday, May 28th, 2026 at 1 o'clock in the Administrative Council Room. The Committee of the Whole met this evening at 6 o'clock p.m. Let's move on to the commissions. Airport Commission, Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President. Airport Commission will next meet on Thursday, April 16th at 4 p.m. in council chambers.
Stormwater Commission, Councilmember May.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Stormwater Commission will meet Tuesday, April 14th in council chambers at 5 p.m.
And the Shade Tree Commission, Councilmember Hines.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Shade Tree Commission will meet Tuesday, April 28th at 5 p.m. here in council chambers.
Okay. The Planning Commission will meet Monday, February 23rd at 7 o'clock here in council chambers. Cemetery Board, Councilmember Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Cemetery Board will meet tomorrow, Wednesday, February 18th, 2026 at 5 p.m. in council chambers.
Cable TV Commission, Councilmember Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Cable TV Commission will meet Thursday, April 2nd at 4 p.m. in council chambers.
Okay. And the Senior Citizens Commission, Councilmember Stugmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senior Citizens Commission will next meet on Monday, April the 6th, 3:30 p.m., and that meeting will be held at the Suprema Senior Center on School Drive.
The Board of Zoning Appeals will meet on Monday, March 2nd at 6:30 here in council chambers, and Architectural Design will meet on February 23rd at 4:30 here in council chambers. And we will move on to the reading of our legislation.
Okay, we'll start with first readings. We have ordinance number 26-030, sponsored by Councilmember Chris Maxwell and discussed at Public Ways. An ordinance levying special assessments for the repairing, replacement, or construction of certain sidewalks and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 26-030 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-030 has been placed on third reading. Second reading, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ordinance number 26-031 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Chris Maxwell and discussed at Public Ways. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for, receive bids, and award contracts for the 2026 Sidewalk Improvement Program and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 26-031 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-031 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 26-032 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stugmeyer, discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for and receive bids and enter into a contract for tree trimming and tree removal for electric lines clearance and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to place ordinance number 26-032 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-032 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 26-033 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Zach Berger and discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract with Andritz for the rebuild of an aqua screen at the city's wastewater treatment plant and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 26-033 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-033 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 26-034 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Tom Stegmeyer, discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to purchase materials for CityLink's Fiber to the Home fiber project from Gray Bar Electric through the Omnia Partners Public Sector Cooperative Purchasing Organization, or a vendor offering a lower price on a specific item under another state-approved purchasing cooperative and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I make a motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance number 26-034.
Second.
Berger?
Yes.
May?
Yes.
Yuracek?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes. Mr. President, I call a question on ordinance number 26-034.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Stugmeyer's motion to call the question on ordinance number 26-034, will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Yuracek?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
And May?
Yes.
Ordinance number 26-034 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 26-035 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Jeannie Hines and discussed at Economic Development and Planning. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative agreement for public infrastructure improvements with the Medina County Port Authority and Addison Wadsworth LLC and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to place ordinance number 26-035 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-035 has been moved to second reading.
I'm sorry. Okay, ordinance number 26-036 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Angela May, discussed at Economic Development and Planning and forwarded by the Planning Commission. An ordinance to rezone dual jurisdiction lots number 10232-10235 to Shadow Creek Planned Unit Development and to adopt zoning regulations for the Shadow Creek PUD District and declaring an emergency. Also, a public hearing will need to be set. I can set that for April 7th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. in council chambers if the council does not object.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 26-036 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-036 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 26-037 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Mike Reese and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for and receive bids and enter into a contract for the city street sweeping and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we place ordinance number 26-037 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ordinance number 26-037 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 26-038 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember Mike Reese and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for and receive bids and enter into a contract for Pebble Lime for the City of Wadsworth Water Treatment Plant and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move that we remove the three reading rule from ordinance number 26-038.
Second.
Berger?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Yuracek?
Yes.
May?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
And Hines?
Yes.
Mr. President, I call a question on ordinance number 26-038.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Reese's calling the question on ordinance number 26038. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
May?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
Ordinance number 26-038 has been adopted.
Ordinance number 26-039 on first reading, sponsored by Councilmember John Yurcheck and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to make a supplemental appropriation of $1,550,000 in the 425 General Capital Improvement Fund for purposes other than personal services for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2026, and to declare an emergency.
Mr. President, I move we place ordinance number 26-039 on second reading.
Do we have a second? Do we second?
Second, Berger.
Berger. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Who said no?
Hines.
Hines?
Maxwell.
Ordinance number 26-039 has been placed on second reading.
Ordinance number 26-0, our third readings. Ordinance number 26-002 on third reading, sponsored by Councilmember Mike Reese and discussed at Committee of the Whole. An ordinance to amend Section 34.36 of the codified ordinances of the City of Wadsworth to provide for the allocation of income tax receipts of $4,767,961 during fiscal year 2026 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 26-002.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Reese's call to question on ordinance number 26002, will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
May?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
And Reese.
Yes.
Ordinance number 26-002 has been adopted.
Our last one is ordinance number 26-015 on third reading, sponsored by Councilmember Chris Maxwell and discussed at Public Service. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement for professional engineering services for design of the 2026 Sanitary Sewer Overflow SSO Reduction Project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I call the question on ordinance number 26-015.
Hearing no objection to Councilmember Maxwell's call to question on ordinance number 26015, will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Stugmeyer?
Yes.
May?
Yes.
Reese?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Hines?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Yurcheck?
Yes.
Ordinance number 26-015 has been adopted. Is there any other business from the administration? Anything from council?
There's going to be a quick ribbon cutting down this Friday, 11 o'clock, down at the Pocket Park for our final ring mural. Will be installed down there. This the final. It's the match one where the wings are all made out of matchstick. So that'll be this Friday. We'll have a little dedication at 11 o'clock down there. So.
Okay. I want to give kudos to the water department. We had a serious break at one of the wells, and they had that repaired within a matter of a couple hours and got the tank refilled.
Thank you.
Also, I want to make a correction. When I said the council is going to host conversations with the council, I inadvertently at the last meeting said it was going to be March 26th. It's going to be Thursday, February 26th. That's in a week and a half here in council chambers, so folks can come talk to council members and not necessarily be on TV or in a meeting situation and express concerns or have questions for us. We'll try to answer those to the best of your ability. Without anything else, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Very good.
Cheer again.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.